Hello, everyone. This episode will be a little bit different with a conservative angle on the political issue of gun rights. We have to do this over the time of a short little hiatus to the main discussion part of the podcast, and we hope you enjoy hearing this viewpoint. We look forward to having more perspectives on different issues in the future.
Hello, everyone. This is Policy War. My name is John, and today will be a little different. Normally, I am joined by my two co-hosts to debate and discuss policy issues of the day from the conservative, progressive, and libertarian angles. However, today I am alone, and we will be exploring a particular policy issue focusing on the conservative angle. This episode will be followed by segments done by my co-hosts on other policy issues from other perspectives. Today, we will be taking a dive into one of the most important issues in American politics today, gun control and the Second Amendment. I want to preface this episode by saying that this is a contentious issue. The opinions I express today do not necessarily mirror those of my co-hosts or any other person involved with this podcast. Before we move into the meat of this issue, I want to quickly define some terms. I will be using gun and firearm interchangeably. Either will refer to small arms one would typically think of in this policy area. Semi-automatic means a weapon that fires one round per pull of the trigger. Automatic weapons are ones that fire continuously if the trigger is held down. Assault weapon, for any times we use this flawed and ill-defined term, will mean military-style rifles common to the term. Now that our definitions are out of the way, we can begin. Under the Constitution, American citizens have an individual right to bear arms. This is established in the Second Amendment to the Constitution. The 2008 Supreme Court decision in District of Columbia v. Heller affirmed that the rights under the Second Amendment are not second-class rights subject to greater government intrusion. They're as much a shield as those found in the First or Fourth Amendments. These rights are imperative for a free people, not merely in the case of necessary home defense, though even a short look into the research in this area makes clear that the ownership of weapons is a necessity for defense of oneself and those one loves in many instances. These rights are also necessary to maintain the other rights enjoyed by a free people. A runaway government has no final barrier to tyranny than force. Look no further than China or the Soviet Union to look at history to see what happens when pathological systems and governments are enforced upon an unarmed populace. But my saying that these rights are imperative are, in fact, an opinion. And if a critical mass of my fellow citizens disagree, they have recourse to change the law, a constitutional amendment to repeal the Second Amendment. Why then have they not done this? Because that mandate from the people does not exist. Instead, we have found state and local governments across the country chomping at the bit to enforce every restriction and regulation against these rights, hoping to override the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court through sheer force of legislation and litigation alone. Imagine such overzealous governments targeting your First Amendment rights. We would not stand for that. But policy must be met on its own terms. We cannot always be debating nebulous and abstract issues. Therefore, moving to gun control, we will talk about 3 gun control initiatives, all of which have been proposed, and why these regulations, their copycats and subsidiaries, are poor policy in the short and long term. First, we'll talk about banning assault weapons. Next, proposals which say we should overtax all weapons. Granted, overtaxing is a word I use to describe it, but the heart of the proposal is we should put heavy burdens on persons wanting to buy weapons. Third, banning semi-automatic weapons. Once again, all 3 of the proposals we will talk about today have been proposed at some time in some state. In the first case, banning assault weapons is a poor policy choice, even if for no other reason than assault weapons have next to no workable definition. Look them up, seriously. Most rely on cosmetic features, and really, they're looking to ban scary-looking black weapons more than anything else. And besides, even moving past the problems with the definition, Deaths by assault weapons are such a small percentage of the overall gun deaths in the United States that such a ban would not even overcome the yearly variation. Furthermore, assault weapons are effective, but by no means the only effective weapons for such violence. Handguns and so-called hunting rifles would be just as effective in the hands of a skilled shooter. Banning assault weapons is a theater policy made to make its proponents look good rather than do any actual good. Even then, some will argue, well, even if it doesn't do much good, maybe it will do something. Can't we try? No, we can't, and here's why. Assault weapons are already pervasive in American gun culture. There are millions of them owned in millions of households. Are we seriously going to try and take all of these weapons or demand that they can no longer be transported, sold, or transferred in any way? It would take years to actually find out any effects from this law. And during that time, are we going to rob people of their property rights? Of course not. We can't. We cannot enforce such a ban even if we wanted to. Therefore, this is a short-sighted policy that doesn't actually do any good and may, in fact, do harm. Now, moving on to our second case, overtaxing all weapons has been proposed. Once again, I use the word overtaxing. In reality, it is simply putting a financial burden on persons wanting to own weapons. I find it rather comical that the people who support these policies are overwhelmingly from the left. They are supposedly the bastion of the working class, of the poor. And yet, this regulation would do only one thing. It would take Second Amendment rights and pull them out from under everybody except for the rich. The wealthy people in the United States would continue to use and enjoy these rights. They have the disposable income to pay any tax that you might demand for these weapons. So, in effect, all you would do is steal rights from poor people while making the rights of rich people that much more valuable. It would be the same as a poll tax, requiring absurd amounts of money before a person could vote. I was unaware the left so loved the rich, as they wanted to hand rights over to them, make them more valuable, while at the same time stealing them from those without such means who might want to exercise those rights. Finally, we come to the proposal of banning all semi-automatic weapons. Unfortunately, this is the worst of these policy choices. Semi-automatic weapons, which we defined at the beginning of this podcast, encompasses the vast majority of weapons. Most pistols, functionally revolvers, most rifles, and some shotguns. Even the weapons no leftist would ever dream of banning would be caught in this trap. Furthermore, how will you effectuate this? Make them a felony to own and demand them all to be turned in? Even if the government were to offer compensation, it would never be enough to overcome the fact that the law will have made felons of law-abiding citizens. Once that line has been crossed, I guarantee that many of those citizens would then consider a small step to ignore other laws. And a simple, single mother with a semi-automatic pistol for self-defense on her walk home may yet decide that if that's a felony, she might as well have an automatic short-barreled rifle felony too. I'm sure you laugh. You assume that such an idea is crazy. It isn't. If you make criminals and felons of law-abiding citizens, I guarantee you they will do everything in their power to then live up to the name. For at that point, what do they have to lose? In for a penny, in for a pound. Too often, those who know the least about weapons, they're the ones who make the rules. We need educated legislators with targeted and effective interventions. If we truly want to solve gun violence in the United States, then why don't we come up with real solutions that might have actual effect? Even better, why don't we try actually implementing the systems we supposedly already have? A number of mass shooters in this country's history only have weapons because information that was meant to be input into the background check system was not. Perhaps we should try actually effectuating our policies we have now before deciding to further intrude upon the rights of Americans. But more than that, We need legislators and laws that respect the rights of Americans. Our rights are valuable. They shouldn't be given away simply because we are scared or the future is unknown. We need to remember that if you give just a little to the state, they will take quite a bit. And I would be very careful what you give them, for you might not always be in control of who is the next to take. And that is why our laws and our legislators need to respect the rights of Americans. For if those rights are disrespected, well, there is an amendment for that. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find this episode and all others anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Please give a review, tell a friend, and we appreciate listeners like you. Thank you.